Okay, let's dive right into this. You see a massive freight train, right? It's chugging along, carrying hundreds of tons of goods across the country. Have you ever stopped to wonder, did that one specific journey actually make any money? It seems like a simple question, but believe me, the answer is anything but. Everything in your house, everything you use every day, has a logistic story behind it. And right at the heart of that story is this one crucial calculation that decides if moving all that stuff was even worth it in the first place. So, to really get it, we're going to be a fly on the wall inside a real logistics firm. We get to listen in as a senior employee shows a new colleague exactly how they solve this profitability puzzle step by step. So, where do they start? Well, pretty much where you'd expect, inside the company's main software, the ERP system. This thing is supposed to be the one-stop shop, the single source of truth for every single train journey, or as they call them, a rake. The first thing they do is pull all the data for every single train that left the station in the last month. They just extract it all, journey by journey, and then dump it into one giant master spreadsheet. And this is where the hunt for the real profit number officially begins. All right, so to figure out the profit, it really just boils down to two things. All the money coming in, which is the revenue, and all the money going out, which are the costs. Sounds simple, right? Well, let's see about that. The revenue side of things is actually pretty straightforward. It's what they call the booking amount. Basically, it's just the total bill they send to their clients. The companies whose stuff is actually on the train. That's their income for this trip. Now, the costs. This is where it gets interesting. See, you have expenses at both ends of the journey. At the starting station, you've got the inward cost for trucking goods to the train and hamali, which is just the labor for loading it all up. The biggest cost by far is the railway freight. That's what they pay the actual railway. Then at the destination, you've got more labor to unload it and local transport to get the goods to their final stop. And you see those delay fees, demurrage? Those are nasty little surprises that can pop up on either side if the train gets held up for any reason. And here's the real twist in the story. You'd think all those costs we just talked about would be neatly logged in that big, fancy, expensive software. But nope. This is where the real work starts, because the digital system, well, it just can't be trusted. This quote says it all. It's the reality of the job. The senior employee basically says, look, you just can't depend on the system to have the right numbers. So the accounting team has to put on their detective hats and start chasing people down for the real info. And this is exactly why. The system is just full of these digital black holes. Maybe those delay fees are missing entirely. Or the freight charge is just plain wrong. Somebody made a typo. Or, and this happens all the time, another branch paid for something in cash and just never logged it. Any one of these little mistakes can totally torpedo the final profit number. So their entire job becomes about bridging this massive gap between the digital world and cold, hard reality. They have to take the flawed data from the software and match it up against a physical paper trail. We're talking railway receipts, bills from truckers, delivery forms, to figure out what was actually spent. And this whole detective job, it is an absolute race against the clock. The chase begins before the month is even over. Around the 25th, they're already on the phone, emailing other branches, asking for their expense updates. Then, for the first few days of the new month, it's a mad dash to check all those big costs against the paper documents. And it all has to be done final and correct by day 5. No excuses. Okay, so after all that chasing, all that correcting and verifying, the moment of truth finally arrives. All the puzzle pieces are finally on the table. It is time to do the math. And the actual formula is beautifully, almost ridiculously simple. Total revenue minus total expenses equals your profit. But the thing is, now we know the incredible amount of human effort that goes into making sure those total numbers are even remotely correct. So on one side of the scale, you have the total booking amount, all the money they earned. And on the other side, you've got the grand total of all those costs they had to hunt down. The railway fee, the labor, the trucking, those pesky delay fees, all of it. And after you subtract one from the other, there it is. Success, a profit of 185,450 rupees. That one number is the result of a full week of intense data forensics and a whole lot of cross-country phone calls. So you might be wondering, why go through all this trouble, right? Why not just trust the system and call it good enough? Well, because this whole process is about so much more than just putting a number on a spreadsheet. See, This is why it really matters. Getting that number right tells them exactly how to price their services for the next client. It shines a big, bright spotlight on which routes have expensive delays that need fixing. It makes every single branch accountable for what they're spending. And maybe most important of all, it proves that even with all this modern software, that human touch, that careful oversight is still absolutely essential. The senior employee just nails it with this quote. He says this isn't just about fixing mistakes, it's about taking ownership. It is about active management, it's about communication, and it's about a relentless, never-give-up follow-up. That is the difference between just doing a job and actually managing a business. So the next time you see a freight train rolling down the tracks, just remember, behind all that steel and cargo, there's a team of people probably racing a deadline, hunting through spreadsheets and stacks of paper, all to answer that one simple question. Did we make money? Kind of makes you wonder what's going on behind the scenes of everything else we use, doesn't it?